is LBC. From Global, leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, I'm here in the European Parliament in Strasbourg this evening, where tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, Monsieur Barnier will tell us that the United Kingdom has made sufficient progress and we can move on to the next stage. But it's in America tonight, where I think we need to look to what the big story is. A special election is taking place in Alabama, the state of Alabama today. I guess we'd kind of call it a by-election, and boy, this election matters. It matters, think about this, because Trump managed to get his tax reform legislation through the Senate the other day by 51 votes to 49. That's just how tight things are in the US Senate right now. And this contest has been bedeviled by controversy from the very start. So for us to try and understand the story, get its significance, I'm going to go right away to Wade Smith. He's the morning show host on News Talk 570 in Gadsden, Alabama, which is Roy Moore's home, and a place from which come some allegations dating back 40 years. Wade, good afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
No, not one little bit, Wade. So tell me, Wade, why is this election, in what for the last 25 years has been a pretty safe Republican seat, why is everybody on tenterhooks tonight over this result?
It has been a very safe seat for the Republican Party and for those that consider themselves conservatives in the state of Alabama for, like you said, over 25 years now. Jeff Sessions, who is now the Attorney General for President Trump, he held the seat before. The governor appointed Luther Strange into the seat. And now when the governor was removed in the state of Alabama, Robert Bentley, they also appointed a new senator, had this special election come up because they thought there was a little dirtiness behind the appointing of Luther Strange to the seat. Luther Strange lost to Judge Roy Moore in the primary and in a runoff, and now you see Judge Roy Moore taking on Doug Jones, who's the Democrat. And it's a very, very big deal for this state because with it being a conservative seat, there's a lot of people that do not want to see a Democrat go to this most conservative seat because, as you said, with the tax reform bill 5149, this would shift the numbers to 5149 overall for the Republican Party in Washington, D.C. But with those few Republicans that don't tend to vote block with the rest of the party, that can be real trouble for President Trump.
Yeah, people like John McCain, who very rarely support him, of course. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this really is absolutely knife-edge stuff, not just for Alabama, but it is also for the U.S. Senate. And Roy Moore has been a very prominent figure in Alabama for the last 3 and a bit decades, and yet a series of allegations, Wade, have been made against him, haven't they?
Yes, there are a lot of people in Alabama that are not happy that he is the Republican candidate. I myself are in that boat as well. I did not vote for Roy Moore. I did not vote for Doug Jones. I decided to write a candidate in instead because I couldn't feel comfortable sending either candidate there. But I don't think it's going to affect Roy Moore. I think he will still win this election. He will be the GOP senator heading to Washington, D.C. But, yes, these allegations, they stem from over 40 years ago. He's accused of being in an inappropriate relationship with a 14-year-old, inappropriate relationship with a 16-year-old, and abusing certain women of that age as well. And just having a downright creepiness to him as well, being in that small area. Gadsden is not the biggest area in Alabama. He, in fact, lives in a very small town near Gadsden, and he rides his horse to the polls every year that he goes. That tells you how small of an area it is if you can ride his horse from there to the polls. But, yes, it's very tough times to be a Republican or a conservative in the state of Alabama right now because some of us just can't get comfortable sending this guy to Congress. And it's tough because we don't want to give up the seat either. We don't want to see a Democrat in this seat. But if it comes down to choosing our morals over choosing the party, I mean, what are you going to do in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just amazed that this guy, has been so prominent in Alabama, as I say, for over 3 decades, and yet suddenly he runs for Senate and these allegations all come out. Now, I'm not saying they're true. I'm not saying they're not true. I am a little bit struck by the timing of these allegations. And nonetheless, Wade, you think Moore's going to win this comfortably, do you?
I really do. I think he'll win this by 8 to 9 points. The only thing that really would worry people in that situation is that I'm seeing a lot of people at the polls. They did not expect the turnout to be huge. We heard from Secretary of State John Merrill this morning across our morning shows. He expected 20 to 25%. I was thinking more in the 18 to 19% range. That's what the primary saw. The runoff only saw 12% come to the polls. But I think the higher that percentage gets, the better this is for Doug Jones, because it's going to be more and more people coming out saying no more. Also, what I'm seeing, too, is a definitive age line in this election. The older the voter, the more likely they are to vote for Judge Roy Moore and his conservative values. The younger the voter, it seems to be swinging towards Doug Jones because they don't like the way that Roy Moore is portraying the state of Alabama.
And what time, Wade, can we expect a result?
The results will come in. I would think we would probably know something by 9 or 10 o'clock our local time, which would be in about 9 hours. The polls close in about 6 hours at 7 p.m. Central Time here in the States. I don't know if we will have a definitive answer at that point, but I'm hoping we do, because if we go into tomorrow morning with no definitive answer, it's going to be a wild ride all day.
Wade, thank you very much indeed. That was Wade Smith, morning show host on News Talk 570 in Gadsden, Alabama, explaining that whilst he thinks that the Republicans are going to win, maybe a higher turnout, maybe a protest against this man could lead to a huge upset, which would produce a massive problem for Trump in the Senate. So that's going on in America. But, you know, we're a year on now. We're a year on. November the 8th, Trump was elected. January the 21st, he became inaugurated. And I just wonder, a year on, how do you think Trump is doing? If you think he's doing pretty well and deserves his job as Commander-in-Chief, then call me on 0345 6060 973. And if you're calling from the USA, it's 01144 345 6060 973. I'll be very pleased to take calls from the USA. Or maybe you think, whatever he does, the man reputationally doesn't do himself or America any good at all, then of course you can text to 84850. Or maybe with all this fake news around and claim and counterclaim, you're not quite sure what to believe, in which case of course you can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. You can watch us on Facebook from here in Strasbourg and comment there too. I'm going to go to Darren in Oldham. Good evening, Darren.
Evening, Nigel. Hello there. I believe tonight in Alabama will be a huge turning point. It's massively important, and I believe the Democrat Doug Jones will win massively. I think this is where Alabama, where America turn on Trump, and where they say, we're now deciding to think about what's right and what's wrong, and Trump's administration is so wrong, and the people of Alabama tonight will reject Trump, elect a Democrat, and this is the beginning of the end of your friend Donald Trump.
Do you believe that for a reason, Darren, or do you just want to believe that?
No, I believe it because you look at the evidence. Trump's circus in the White House has gone from one disaster to another. Awful policies. The Republican in the state of Alabama, Roy Moore, is a racist, a homophobe, serious allegations of sexual abuse against him. You either pick what's right or you pick what's wrong. And Doug Jones, a Democrat, is the right candidate. This is the beginning.
When you talk,
of the
Darren,
end for Trump.
And Darren, you know, I know that this is a massive controversy around Roy Moore, but getting back to the president, what is it he's done, Darren, in office that he didn't promise to do during the campaign?
Build the wall. To America.
No. Yes, sorry, I'm asking that question the other way round. I'm saying he got elected on a ticket. You know, a whole raft of things that he said he would do, and actually, isn't he actually doing them? I mean, isn't he restoring faith with the voters in America?
It's smoke and mirrors. He's a fake. He was bringing all the jobs back from China to the USA. It's not happened. The wall hasn't happened. He was going to stop all the gun crime in Chicago. People are still being killed every day. He's made false promises. This is it tonight for Trump. The people of Alabama, the people of America will turn on him and take America back to the beautiful liberal democracy that it was. Because Hillary Clinton should be in the White House.
Well, I tell you what, Darren, right or not, one thing you're absolutely right about, and that is this result coming out of Alabama tonight matters big time. Matters to the Republican Party, matters to Trump, matters to future legislation. Darren, I thank you for your call, and Darren says this is it. This is the turning point. Trump will lose, Roy Moore will lose, and this is the beginning of the end. Well, that was a very good first call. I'm not sure I agree with it, but wow, it was strong in content. By text I admire Trump's determination to be true to his convictions. We need leaders like him to recalibrate Western politics, in which only the liberal left have had a voice, and that's certainly the view of Michael. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, live from Strasbourg, and it's 7:15. On the day that Alabama goes to the polls, and it's a crucial election for the Senate, one that Trump really does need to win. And before the break, Darren from Oldham was predicting, no, Trump's going to lose, and it'll be the beginning of the end of Trump. Either way, this really matters. But I'm asking you, how do you think Trump's doing a year in? And I suggest that you try and measure his success or failure by, firstly, foreign policy. How's he looked on the world stage? Is he right to have sounded the alarm about North Korea? Secondly, domestic policy. He struggled until he got tax reform through. He struggled to get much through Congress, but quite a lot of deregulation has been going on at state level. The economy. How's he doing with the economy? He promised growth, he promised jobs. And perhaps fourthly, and most controversially, how's he doing in terms of style? What do people think about a man that tweets, a man that accuses the mainstream media of producing fake news? I would suggest, folks, they're the markers on which we should judge whether we think, nearly a year in, he's doing well or doing badly. I'm going to ask that very question to Jean-Jacques, who's calling from Reading and is a new caller to the show. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Farage, sir. How are you?
I'm well. I'm obviously watching what happens in Alabama very, very closely. And Jean-Jacques, I'm going to say that the one thing about Trump that I really like is he intends to stick to his manifesto, whether it's moving the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem in Israel or whatever it is. He intends to stick to his manifesto, and I find that quite refreshing.
And I couldn't agree with you any further, actually. However, the challenges that we face, we live in a society now where we're all very well connected on media, on Facebook and the like. And, you know, all it takes is for one person to pick up one Guardian headline and take it out of context, or, you know, absolutely blow up about one thing but not represent the story truly. So if we look at Mr. Trump, you know, he's come in on a mandate that he said he's going to bring jobs back to America and he's going to work on the economy. And across over both the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ, they're hitting, you know, record highs, absolute record highs. U.S. household wealth has peaked at 1.7 trillion, which has never happened before. Month on month, you know, food stamp usage is down. Illegal border crossings in Mexico are down 40%, and the investment is coming back. But no one will talk about that. What they all talk about, though, is the fire and fury speech that Mr. Trump made a few months ago, saying how outrageous it was. And now let's not fool ourselves. This is a not highly polished politician that we're used to in the likes of Cameron, etc. You know, he speaks off the cuff, and sometimes...
Thank goodness, some people would say, Jean-Jacques. I mean, some would say, what a refreshing change of style.
I would say it's a refreshing change of style to an extent. You know, you want to get out there, you want to put your point across, you want to be who you are, not at the expense of offending anybody. However, what I would say about Donald Trump is the fact that he will go out and he'll make one comment and people will criticize him. So let's take Fire and Fury, for example. He made this very off-the-cuff speech, and I don't think anybody knew that was coming, not even, you know, his spads or his staffers. You know, 2 months later down the line, North Korea puts a nuclear rocket over Japanese territory, which is a non-nuclear country. And where are the Guardian readers of Facebook? crying out in outrage about that. They're nowhere. They're absolutely nowhere. So I think he's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't. I think he's coming with a mandate. I think he's stuck to the mandate very well, and the facts absolutely speak for themselves. Whether you like the guy or not, you cannot detract from the fact that he's doing the job that he set out to do. But because everybody over here thinks that America's a land of milk and honey and that there's not challenges over there, they don't like the fact that he's championing the rights of the kind of Americans who have faced massive struggles with globalization.
John Jack, thank you very much. A Trump supporter there. Nigel, I think Trump is doing good. He's trying to deliver what he promised to do. He doesn't deserve all the bad press. It's ridiculous, says Kathy. Do you know, Jimmy Carter, who's 93, president of the USA in the late 1970s, said, a big interview in the New Yorker magazine, he said he couldn't remember in his lifetime any US president being so prejudiced against by the press in the USA. And by the way, I'm being very praiseworthy of him, but it doesn't mean he's perfect. And I do sometimes wonder about things that he tweets and retweets on Twitter. And I do sometimes think maybe he picks just too many fights. But is he delivering on the economy? Yeah, and that, I think, really is the big one. I wonder what Sean, who's calling from Sweden, thinks. Good evening, Sean.
How you doing, Nigel? You all right?
I'm doing all right. So I'm sure the Swedish media must absolutely loathe Trump.
They don't really loathe him because they don't see his policies as progressive or digressive. They just see the man as an idiot. Because
right.
We will go back to this whole Jerusalem argument, etc., where he named the capital city back on the 1 week ago or something like this. Everyone was saying that, but Clinton did this, so Obama said this, they did this, Trump didn't want to do it. Now, I'm not a Trump supporter myself, but I will say, I'll hold my hands up and say, he had nothing to lose on this one. He had nothing to lose. As he said, they all tried it, nothing worked, so he tried it again, a different way, his own way. But the thing is, his actions just seem to be reflected as, how you say, for him, not for anybody else.
What? As if it's all one sort of huge ego trip, you mean?
It's a massive ego trip for Trump, I mean, this whole thing about the Roy Moore, as your supporter said earlier, or not supporter, your caller said earlier from the States, that we all know he's going to get in. He's going to get in. The younger voters are going to put some obstacles against him. But it's a massive dilemma. With Trump supporting him, it's a massive dilemma for the real problems that are happening.
Yeah, I mean, Sean, you've said you're not a Trump supporter. Do you think he's succeeding with the US economy?
I just don't believe that he has the minerals to be a political leader. That's my thoughts. Because, yes, people voted for him because he was non-political, non-presidential, non-diplomatic, etc. Surely these people
Sean,
realise that they made a bad choice.
But a year in, he's still all of those things, isn't he?
That's exactly the thing. And what I'm trying to work out is people are saying, he didn't do the wall, he didn't do this, he didn't do this. I'm trying to think out what he actually has done.
Well, he's brought tax reform in, massive changes to American corporate tax and simplification of personal tax. That was a key part of his ticket, his manifesto. He's moved the embassy to Jerusalem, something else that he promised. He is deregulating, certainly more at state level, but some at federal level as well. And on issue after issue, Sean, he's delivering. Now, he hasn't built the wall yet. I tell you what, he will, though.
I'm not talking about that wall, because if I'm honest, Nigel, that wall was just it was a bigger gimmick than you voting for the fishing rights of British fishermen. It was never going to happen. It was
that wasn't a gimmick. I tell you what, Sean, we better get our fishing rights back. It's what people voted for.
I hear you saying now we better get our fishing rights.
We had
1 year ago. You think now the borders are now trapped inside our coastal borders ourselves, so we can't. Our fishing is worse off.
I tell you what, Sean, we'll discuss fishing another day, all right? We've talked about Trump, and I thank you very much indeed for your call. I'm going to go to Valerie, who's calling from Teddington. Good evening, Valerie.
Good evening, Nigel. I tried to get through to you many times, and I'm delighted I have this time.
It says you're a new caller, so have you struggled to get through, Valerie?
I have before, yes.
Right, well, I tell you what, you're now on LBC, the floor is yours. How is Trump doing?
Great. I think he's wonderful. I'm a great admirer of him. He's done everything he said he'd do, and I have to say I think he's a jolly sight better than the last one. Also, I can't understand why people are being so horrible to him, and the press is terrible to him, really terrible, and I can't understand it. One thing I will say...
Valerie, he is quite provocative. He is quite provocative towards them, isn't he?
Well, does it matter? I don't care about that. He's done the things he said he'd do, and that's what's important. And another thing, I think, he loves his country. He cares about his country, and I wish we had somebody here who cared about our country.
Can you see, Valerie, I mean, is there a major flaw you can see in his personality?
I don't mind, but he's terribly brash, as you say, as a New Yorker, and they do tend to be, I think. But I don't think any of that matters. I don't think it matters. People pick on him all the time.
And he's doing what he said he'd do, Valerie. I agree with you. Thank you for being persistent and getting through. Valerie there in Teddington loves him. Robert in Dulwich, how's he doing a year on?
I'll tell you what, Nigel, what this guy is doing is upsetting everyone in Europe. Because when he campaigns and he says he's going to do something and he actually carries it out, all of a sudden European politicians have got some competition, haven't they? There's a man on the world stage who actually carries through what he's going to say.
What, you mean rather than lying to people? You mean rather than lying to people at each election, Robert?
Lying through their teeth. I can remember Obama during the campaigning for Hillary, saying the jobs that Trump is promising will never come back. Those were his words. And they are coming back. And we're seeing that in this country as well. We're seeing onshoring as wages rise in China. That's quite natural that some will come back here. Look, we've got a man, the US president, who is openly at war with the CIA, the FBI, all the intelligence agencies, all the lefties. They all complain about how the CIA destabilized so many countries. And when a president has the courage and the gumption to come along and take them face on, they side with the media, they side with the establishment, right? This guy, whether he's brash and you don't like his style and all the rest of it, I don't care. I'm not inviting him round to have Christmas dinner with me. He's
right, but he gets things done. Robert, I thank you for the call. I've got some criticism here on this point. So Trump is good, according to some of your listeners, because he's true to his convictions. What kind of an argument is that? Well, whoever you are that sent that in, let me tell you, it's a democratic argument. Because you say to the electorate, vote for me, I'll do these things, and whether you love it or hate it, that is what he's doing. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, live from Strasbourg. It's 7:30. As we speak, they're voting in Alabama. The Republican candidate, Judge Roy Moore, highly controversial. Trump needs him to win and needs him to win very, very badly. And a year on, I'm saying, look at the economy, look at foreign affairs, look at tax reform, look at his style. And I'm asking you, do you think a year on he's doing well or he's doing badly? But before that, last Friday, the so-called deal that the government did with the European Union, the one that allowed them to say to us that we've made satisfactory progress and we can move on to the next stage of talks. I wasn't happy. I felt we'd put far too many concessions on the table in return for a guarantee of absolutely nothing. Over the weekend, the government were doing their best to reassure us that actually all these offers that were put on the table, and in particular the up to £39 billion, none of that actually was worth a row of beans unless first we got a trade deal offered back to us. So the idea was actually we can take all of this away. Well, tomorrow morning the European Parliament meets, and one of the demands is going to be that last week's Brexit deal is converted into a legally binding text as soon as possible. The Parliament's chief Brexit coordinator, Guy Verhofstadt, said suggestions from David Davis that the agreement was not binding undermine trust in the UK among MEPs. So on television on Sunday, Davis said that, you know, we could alter all of this on all of these issues, you know, the Irish border, citizens' rights, the £39 billion, and he said the deal was really, you know, much more of a statement of intent than it was a legally enforceable thing. Well, the Irish government said it was a bizarre thing for him to have said, and the Brexit secretary took to the airwaves again on Monday, saying that our commitment on the border issue was much more than just legally enforceable. And if you're getting confused, that's fine. I am as well. And the European Commission spokesman, Ms. Shinas, later confirmed that the joint report published last week by Davis and Barnier was not legally binding until it is incorporated into a formal Article 50 withdrawal agreement expected in the autumn of 2018. So, difficult to know exactly where we are with all of this. The European Commission say this was a deal between gentlemen, and it was fully backed and endorsed by the UK government. And I think this is a case, it's a classic case of a British government and ministers who agree to something when they're in Brussels, come home, think it might sound a bit unpalatable, and then in the face of that, they try to say, actually, it's not as bad as it looks. I suspect it probably is as bad as it looks. But hey, maybe we're going to get a fantastic trade deal. I'm not convinced of it, but we will simply have to see. So back to the USA. Back to Trump a year on. Is he doing well or is he doing badly? And to answer that question definitively for us is Andreas, who's calling from Bethnal Green and is a new caller to the show. Welcome, Andreas.
Hi, Nigel. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Pleasure to talk to you. So, how's he doing?
Oh, well, let's sum it up. Okay, so what's he actually done? So he's annoyed the whole Islamic community. He's almost starting World War III by declaring Israel's capital. He also thinks he can grab any part of the anatomy from a female. That's just a short list. Don't get me wrong.
Well,
listen, I like to be
Andreas, okay. He did make those deeply unsavoury comments, which he described as locker room talk. But that's kind of before he was president, yeah?
Yeah, I agree. Okay, fair enough. It's before he was president, but as a president, you've got to be a role model. Think all these kids in America, they're looking up to the commander-in-chief, aren't they? At the end of the day, they're looking up to him. They're thinking, well, if he can do it, then it'll be okay for me. But I'm going on a tangent. Basically, what I wanted to say was the most recent one where he retweeted the fake videos, the anti-Islamic videos. So basically, I know you defended him recently. No, you didn't defend him. You said they were wrong. Like, I'll give you your fair dues. But
I said they were. I said, Andreas. I said they were in poor taste. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. They're in poor taste, but you do seem to. I would like to know, with you and I know you're friends, you and Trump, but if you were out of politics, you weren't politicians, would you two really be friends? Like, in all honesty,
well, he's somebody, Andreas, I find fascinating. He's dynamic. He's an achiever. And, yeah, I think he does pick too many fights sometimes. I think it might be better if he was a little bit more restrained. But you know what, Andreas? He is what he is. He's a force of nature. He's a phenomenon. And what I like about him, he's got, I believe, the right instincts that the West needs at this moment in time. Because, frankly, to stand up against this liberal agenda that has, frankly, devalued the concept of nation-state and what being a part of it means, it needed somebody very rough and tough to take that establishment on, and that's what I admire him for.
Unlike Theresa May, she's not strong. But she's the complete opposite in that sense. But he does what he says he's going to do. Okay, yeah, I agree. He does what he says on his manifesto. Charles Manson said what he was going to do, and he did it. Doesn't make him right, does it, at the end of the day?
I don't think that's come on, that's not a fair comparison, is it? Look, what I'm saying, Andreas, is this. I am sick to death of people being elected all over the West saying, we'll do this, we'll do that. They only say it to curry favour with the electorate. They never intend to actually put it into place. This guy said he would do these things, and I remember speaking to him earlier this year, and I was really struck, Andreas, at his absolute determination to hold faith with the people that voted for him. And I think in a system where our trust and our faith in democracy has diminished so much, I believe that must be a good thing.
Listen, he gives inspiration in the sense that the way he gives his speeches is very old-fashioned. It's like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Very Hague in terms of World War I Hague. But look at that. Even that was a monstrosity, what Hague done in World War I, sending people to their deaths. It doesn't mean it's inspirational, but is it the right thing? When people's lives are at stake, you can't have, in my opinion, obviously your prerogative is different, a nutcase in charge of the free world. Do you know what I'm saying? And also,
well, Andreas, so come on. So in summation, you think he's a nutcase, do you?
Well, okay, he's not. I think he provokes on purpose, but you're not playing games here. You're the leader of the free world. This is real. This is the real world. It's not a game of so you're taking 500 from the pot because you want to win bag. This is I mean?
All right. So you think Andreas at times he behaves inappropriately for the US president, yeah?
Completely. And one more point before you let me go, because you're probably going to let me go. But basically, you know that thing you said about the retweeting of them videos, right? I know you said that he didn't know what he was retweeting. He was retweeting a cabinet tweet. That, for me, is not an excuse. Because before you retweet something as president, you are going to look deeper into what it is. First, you're going to validate whether it's real, surely. Otherwise, you're completely incompetent at your job.
Well, and that's how he operates. That's how he operates. Andreas, I've given you a good go, but I'm going to come back at you here, right? You talked about Field Marshal Haig in World War I sending people to their deaths. You could argue that every single commander in World War I sent huge numbers of people to their deaths. Other armies had worse casualty rates than we had. And in the end, Andreas, it was under Field Marshal Haig that we actually won the war in 1918. He may have been slow to learn. He may have made some big mistakes. But actually, in the end, he was a winner. Right, I've got to move on. Please, if you want to sidetrack me, anybody, ask me questions about World War I, because I can't resist it. But I'm going to go to Mohammed in Oxshott. Mohammed, we're a year in to Trump. He's got a big, crucial vote tonight taking place in Alabama. How do you rate his progress so far?
Hi, Nigel. The previous caller has stolen some of my thunder, but I'd like to make 3 brief points and then perhaps talk about Alabama just if there's a bit of time. So, first of all,
shoot.
I think as far as Trump's concerned, on the economics and on some of the key metrics, for example, unemployment, also GDP growth rates, clearly the numbers are stacking up in his favor, and he committed, you'll recall, he used words like, I'll be the biggest job creator God ever invented. I'm not sure he's quite the biggest job creator or that he's a creation of God, God forbid. But
but the economy is going well. Point. Yeah,
well,
no, absolutely.
The
Second point.
Having said
Second
that,
point, Mohammed.
I just want to say, I'm not sure how much of that is not underlying momentum that has come through from previous administrations and from the upscaling from 2008. But credit to him, the numbers are showing through, even if it's driven by sentiment and prior momentum.
Yeah, Mohammed, time is now running away from us. Make the other 2 points briefly, please.
Right. Second point is, as far as foreign relations and place and location of the U.S. on the world stage is concerned, I think he's done poorly. I think foreign policy has been poorly judged. I think he's been involved and perhaps in very inopportune times taken the wrong decisions, whether it be Jerusalem, whether it be on North Korea, and in the process also sidelined someone like Tillerson, who I think has a lot more to offer and is not being given room to do that. Third is, as a leader, what makes Trump great, you called him a force of nature. I'd rather he was a force for good. But what makes him great is also his greatest downfall. I think as a leader, he has done dismally. He has, rather than being the commander-in-chief, I think he's been the divider-in-chief. He has polarized America. And one of the things, unreservedly, I don't appreciate about what he does, and I'm sorry to say it's caught on in other places, and it's entered your vernacular as well, Nigel, is this sort of attack on the media and what I call and others call gaslighting. And I'll use 2 examples and I'll close off on this. The famous locker room tapes, as you know, he acknowledged it first. Latterly, he somehow came up with a story that it wasn't him, and that's not his voice on the tapes, and it's a conspiracy. Secondly,
well, let's forget
allegations.
About that,
yeah, well, exactly. That's the point right there. Shifts attention, refocuses, and then calls things out for what they're not. Second example, these accusers all these women that are coming forward. I agree with you. It's questionable why so late. But today, to go on the eve of the Alabama election and say that the accusers are being put up by the Democrats is not only in poor judgment, but in awfully poor taste, and is really putting those women, those poor women, through victimization all over again.
Mohammed, you've made lots of points there. I thank you. Just to sort of counter that a bit, Tony says, hi, Nigel. Travel ban reinstated, 3.3% economy, tax reforms passed, recognised Jerusalem, reduced illegal immigration, open coal mines, jobs, boom. You pays your money, you takes your choice. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, live from Strasbourg, and it's 7:46. Is Trump doing well? Is he keeping his promises? And I get by text, if Trump is so great like you say, why has he not followed through on his election promise to put Hillary Clinton in jail? I'm sure there were probably other promises that were made just for votes. Funny enough, he did actually have quite a big go at Jeff Sessions, the former senator, Republican senator from Alabama, who's the Attorney General. He had a right go at Jeff Sessions for saying he should have been much tougher on Hillary. I wonder what Matthew in Leicester makes a year on of Trump. Is he doing well or very badly, Matthew?
Well, I was talking with my colleagues earlier on at work with regards to this, and we've come to the assumption we don't particularly like him. We don't particularly think he's the greatest president that's ever going to be, but we did draw some similarities between him and a fantastic world leader. So, first of all, he has achieved more in his first year than most presidents of recent times. Now, you can only applaud him for that. And when I say achieve more, what I mean is by what he said he was going to do. So that's fair enough, fair play. But then we started drawing similarities between him and someone who is now seen as being a hero. We even have him on our money. In terms of Winston Churchill, when Winston Churchill was first brought into office as Prime Minister, he was tasked with what he believed was to be defending the country. Now, you can argue that Trump thinks he's doing exactly the same thing with regards to the wall. And when Winston stood up against Germany, a lot of the rest of the world said, you're nuts, you're mad, what are you doing? But of course, everyone then soon followed suit. Well, very similar with Trump. Winston was very, very bombastic, and in terms of on the world stage, though he was seen as being a very powerful figure, he was also seen as being a little bit of a Boris Johnson character, a bit of a buffoon. He spent most of his time drunk.
And a warmonger, and a failure in office, and many things like that.
Absolutely. And actually, if you look at Trump, and by the way, he's even put a bust of Winston Churchill in the Oval Office. This is how bizarre it gets now.
What, Matthew, can I just tell you that when I went to meet him with a couple of my colleagues, and it was on the Saturday after he'd been elected on the Wednesday, and that was in his apartment in New York, in the Trump Tower, went to meet him and congratulate him. As we left, the one request, the only request that was made that day was, would he please put the bust of Churchill back into the Oval Office as a symbol, of how he felt that the relationship between our two countries ought to be. And do you know what, Matthew? He did it on the first day, and I was very, very, very pleased with that.
Oh, absolutely. And if you actually draw the similarities, again, Winston Churchill, the first year, everyone was thinking that he was absolutely mad and that he was not going to be able to achieve half the things that he said he was going to do. Well, he went and did it. And with regards to building the wall, again, a little known thing about Winston Churchill, he wanted to burn the Channel. He wanted to set the Channel on fire. I don't think building a wall is quite as mad as that.
Yeah. Had Operation Sea Lion, had the German invasion happened, Churchill would have done it. Right, so Matthew, overall, you and your work colleagues think he's doing pretty blooming well.
As I've said, we don't particularly like him, but I think he is going to go down as being a very good president of the United States.
Terrific. Thank you very much. And you know what? Matthew's right. We don't need to like leaders. Darren is having hallucinations if he thinks Hillary Clinton should be in the White House. That was the first caller we had this evening, saying that today's the day. Alabama is the showdown. Trump will get his comeuppance. Trump has got my support. It's a shame our government couldn't take a leaf out of his books. The tax cuts alone are a massive achievement, says James. I'm going to go to Southampton next to James. James, good evening.
Hi, good evening. I completely disagree with most of the callers, actually.
James, we've had callers on both sides of this.
No, I mean like the one that just spoke to me, just spoke recently.
Fine.
Okay,
Fine.
so it's all well and done if you're creating jobs in your country, such as the coal mines, as you mentioned, and boosting the economy. But what is the point of that when you're creating so much anguish, so much suffering globally? And I'm talking about the Middle East in particular, North Korea, and the fact that so many people outside of the US, and I would say inside the US, have accused him of having some sort of multiple personality disorder because he's so rash in his decisions and so daring, but in the sense that it's almost clumsy. What's going on with North Korea is an absolute joke. I mean, the previous presidents have stepped on eggshells because, I mean, we're on the brink of World War III. It's like a Cold War right now.
James, hang on a second. James, hang on a second. You could argue that previous presidents, both Republican and Democrat, have gone to war in Afghanistan, have gone to war in Iraq, have gone to war in Libya. Trump hasn't launched a war anywhere, has he?
He hasn't launched a war, but those wars that you just mentioned, they didn't have any sort of global nuclear capabilities that are way across, the Pacific that could basically wipe out nations, in minutes.
Right. So would it be better, James? Would it be better, James, if Trump just ignored North Korea and just let them get on building their missiles?
It's not about ignoring. It's the fact the rhetoric that he's using is frightening a lot of his allies, including the UK, and he's really creating a lot of tension with South Korea because South Korea is obviously neighbouring. But I mean, my main focus is mainly within the Middle East. He's like a few weeks ago, I'd say even a few days ago, by him recognising Jerusalem as the capital, as belonging to Israel, he's basically lit a fuse in the whole of the Middle East. And there's been so many protests across Europe, in Sweden, in Germany, and they're livid because he's basically taken matters into his own hands, created so much anguish. James,
we're running out of time. Can I just ask you this? Clinton, the Bushes, even Obama talked or promised in varying shades about moving the embassy to Jerusalem. None of them did it, and Trump did. Isn't he, whether you agree with it, isn't he just keeping faith with his voters?
He is doing that, but I think it was a very, very... he was basically setting fire to a sensitive issue, in my opinion.
All right, no, James, I'm going to say thank you. And James, very critical of Trump's foreign policy, both in North Korea and indeed in the Middle East. Well, let's see what happens. I think he's doing pretty well, really. His approval ratings on a personal level aren't great, but when people are asked, is he handling the economy competently, increasingly people are saying yes. We'll see what happens in Alabama. We'll see what happens in the European Parliament chamber with Monsieur Barnier tomorrow morning. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'll be back tomorrow at 7. At 10 tonight, it's Ian Collins. But up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you.